Hey there, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's a big one. Today we're going to be talking about the newest project from Svalbard, The Weight of the Mask. So here's a fun question. How much does it matter when a band leaves an indie label and goes to a major? Well, that's the funny thing. It's a much more complicated answer than some will make it out to be. With major labels can come bigger budgets, bigger collabs, named producers that an indie label might not be able to pull in. But for certain acts that have an idiosyncratic sound or a style that could only really germinate outside of the major label system because of risks being taken or the subject matter, it's a much more loaded gamble, especially if you're making more abrasive or challenging music. I mean, there are plenty of genres that have decades of acts that got the critical acclaim on the outside, they signed to a major, and then watch their sound get misunderstood or watered down or compromised or outright ruined. But there are also more than a few that discover tighter song construction, better hooks in order to deliver a more technically robust project, and they're handsomely rewarded for it. The point is that it's not black or white, and I would argue it's got a lot more to do with the acts themselves or the individual labels that are doing the signing. And sometimes it can get even more granular down to specific executives at said labels or specific popular eras or sounds. There's a lot of factors here. Now, what all this has meant is that I had a lot of trepidation when it came to screamo and black metal band Svalbard leaving Church Road and signing to Nuclear Blast, mostly because extreme metal acts tend to have some of the worst luck in migrating to a major who necessarily might try to sand down some of their rough edges for even the attempt at a crossover. Now, with Nuclear Blast, I was willing to give a bit more grace. European major labels tend to handle metal better overall. They've got a reputation of signing black metal acts and them not turning to shit. And Svalbard were able to retain their producer, Lewis Johns, who brought such a powerfully gorgeous sound that nailed that genre blend so impressively back in 2020. Now, I was concerned about some of the buzz for this project. Apparently, the atmospherics were going to be scaled back a little bit for a slightly more immediate sound, and the lyrics would be less explicitly political, especially given the brutally honest exploration and how women were treated in and around metal that was on that last album. It was so powerful, but also given the fallout with Holy Roar that has Svalbard changed labels mid-promo run in 2020, I get the desire to take on some different material. And given that the critical acclaim is even more pronounced this time around, what the hell? How did this turn out? Well, honestly, yeah, Svalbard did it again. Without a doubt, this is one of the best metal/metal adjacent projects you will hear in 2023. One of the rare cases where the major label shift results in some subtle changes to their sound and approach that will land a project that feels more accessible to a wider demo, but also doesn't take away from this band's thunderous strengths. A streamlining of their approach that doesn't even lead to much of a simplification, as much of that depth is actually still here. It remains intact. And while there's a part of me that's just tempted to say, it's guitar ear candy, these melodies are fucking extraordinary, do I have to say more? But I actually want to explore the depth because Svalbard's sense of emotional intelligence is so robust that this album is beautiful devastation, where the rawness is now amplified in different ways by more personal framing. It cuts deep. And I think it's important to actually start with, if you're familiar with Svalbard, the sound has changed, but subtly, mostly in terms of the mix depth. When I Die, Will I Get Better, it carried over more cavernous black metal reverb that this album uses more carefully in order to accentuate some slower moments with cleaner vocals that allow Serena Cherry's softer singing to shine through, like on the watery depths accented by the snare and even some horns on How to Swim Down, or the post-rock peeling and that stellar crescendo on Pillar in the Sand. Now, it's still texturally close to blackgaze, but it's no longer reliant on all that reverb, and that means that Svalbard's greatest strength, those huge melodic hooks and grooves, they can feel almost oppressively bright in some of the lead work. Now, we'll get into themes in a little bit, but the sharpness in those cleaner melodies actually kind of plays a role in amplifying how that toxic positivity or even just compassion that you can't reciprocate in the way that you want to, it can burn even hotter. Where a comparison that actually leapt to mind was Jetty Bones, and how the melodic sheen was a mask in its own right that only barely obscures the genuine pain that's beneath it. Now, the opener, Faking It, it's a prime example with how glossy and bright that lead work can be. It almost sounds like it's being accented by synthesizers. Lights Out has this too, as well as a gorgeous post-rock passage halfway through, where that forced smile is pressed under an even hotter spotlight, where the shredded, screaming vocals, they kind of feel like the natural reaction against that. And yet by a song like Defiance, that same brightness somehow becomes an anthemic strength, courtesy of some of that juxtaposition, with softer, cleaner vocals, some real dynamic change-ups, and a more yearning tone, later echoed just as effectively with the killer percussion-driven crescendos of Be My Tomb. Or take a song like November, which is such a impressively haunted, bassy vibe, but then it ramps up into this killer, key-changing black metal passage, and it's just stellar. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have my nitpicks. The bass lines and percussion, especially some of the kick drums, they could use a little bit more of that reverb and texture. And while the blast beats still erupt through, or you get cuts like Lights Out with probably the strongest rhythm section across all the instruments here, although the more snarled groove of the closer to Wilt Beneath The Weight, it is a close second, there are a couple points where some of the kick drum can feel a little thin in the fills, and a focus on more immediate mixes and melody does mean that a certain amount of textured atmospheric expanse has been given up outside of some of the slower passages. And if the melodies don't grab you, you might want a deeper change up, or for them to have a little bit more sonic diversity. But again, those are minor nitpicks, and I personally wasn't just worried about the instrumental formula, and that was going to be tempered by Lewis John staying on as producer, and he does a phenomenal job. No, we need to get to the content, where this album's exploration of depression actually shows a tangible shift. The language is more direct, the poetry is more blunt. It's still raw and contain incredible nuance though, specifically focusing on the element of trying to present normality when you're just falling apart inside. And Svalbard are really damn good at capturing multiple shades of this. Faking It is how even they are kind of stunned by how easily they can deflect so nobody can see their reality. Where a song like Defiance shows just how much of a struggle it can be on some days. And then with a fade into November, how that feeling of creeping numbness can take back over, where love and pain just feel like non-factors. Made all the worse by the acknowledgement that so many people they're extending so much positive emotion, even love in their general direction, and they just can't reciprocate, which brings upon new waves of guilt and heartbreak. The mask that is the running symbol of this album is both easy to put on, and you have to put it on yourself, but it's crushing underfoot. A nested, self-destructive contradiction where they wind up muting their emotions, and it causes people not to take all their pain as seriously. Made all the rough run moments where they can help others, but they just can't help themselves, or even show enough of their own problems for it to be noticed by others. And Be My Tomb is a phenomenal cut because it actually expands to confront some harsh realities. Namely that our current society, it rewards the numb and the emotionless, if only just to fill hours of time. It's easy. And yes, that's the last thing they need in order to heal properly. They recognize the defeated wish as the worst possible devil's bargain to take, and yet when you're faced with so much pain, it's hard not to take it. Now, I will say that Eternal Spirits, which seems to speak from more of an exterior perspective, it does make sense in the album sequencing, even if it's a little early, but doesn't quite connect as strongly because it places the framing outside of the protagonist speaking to them, even if the positive message only amplifies the tragedy ramping into Defiance. But I think the closer is what really nails the arc here. I mean, it's doing all the work, experiencing all that pain, all that emotional honesty, so much work for what to them might feel like so little reward instead of taking the easy way out, especially when embracing one's personal truth places them at the mercy of those who are so insincere, but they don't give up. They grit their broken teeth and they keep going. Yeah, in short, this is gorgeous. It's a heartbreaking album where you might think it's going for something more immediate and accessible on the surface until you dig into the writing and the thematic arc and it rips your guts out. The blend of genres only feels more refined, the emotional intelligence and the nuance is robust, and the melodies and the guitar work, some of the most striking you will hear all damn year. I mean, it's the best possible example of a major label not fucking up the formula, but tweaking it to glorious response. And again, one of the best albums of 2023. Like its forebear, it is a very difficult listen, but man, if it doesn't break your heart, it's going to make it sing. Svalbard are ready for that bigger stage. You should go hear this. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be extremely grateful. Hey, drop your comments on this too. Share this around. I'd like to see more people hear this project. It's going to get slept on by a lot of folks, even being on a major. Beyond that, though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get projects in my schedule, and again, there's a lot of them missing that I kind of want to talk about, link to my Patreon is right over there. Once again, don't feel obligated. Tough times, I understand, but options available. Till then, I'm Mark. You're watching Spectrum Pulse. I'll see you next time.